afternoon and welcome to Luann Godding, legislative candidate from District 10. Thank you, Luann, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today are AARP lead advocacy volunteers Susan DeCamp, Joyce Beck, Tim Potter, and Mike Barwig. I did also want to note David Holmquist, our state president, is also one of your constituents. He was planning to join today, but something has come up and he's unable to attend, so he sends his regrets. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. Luann, we appreciate your taking the next 30 minutes of your time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50+ voter and their families in your district and across Nebraska. As a little bit of background, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering and strengthening people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. As people live longer, healthier lives, we know we need to think differently about what it means to age. So with that, Luann, if you want to start us off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, 5 minutes or less would be great. And then once we've completed your opening, we'll move into the questions. So I'll give it back to you, Luann. Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to be here and share a little bit about myself with you. So my background starts back in Loop City, Nebraska, where I grew up on a farm ranch operation. Grew up in a rural community, loved it. My uncles and aunts were nearby, got to experience all those wonderful things. Grew up riding a horse, driving tractor, being manual labor for my family. And that taught me work ethic. And was just a great opportunity. Loved my small town high school experience. Went away to college, majored in accounting, came back to Omaha, Nebraska. And my very first job was in a public accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, which doesn't exist today. But I worked my way up to audit manager, worked in a lot of small businesses and in the distribution industry primarily. After that, I left, went to work in a catalog company and was able to be there for about 6 years, helped grow that industry and that company in particular. But at that time, I then decided, you know what, I think I need to spend more time with my family. And by that time, my husband and I had 2 sons. We ended up having 3 sons in total. So I quit working full time. And it wasn't too long, maybe a month later, a friend of mine said, hey, I've got a gentleman who just sold his companies. He's retiring. And he wants somebody to keep track of his finances, make sure they're all taken care of, so that he can enjoy retirement and enjoy that time in his life. So I did that until he passed away in 2013. He asked me to please make sure I stayed on until his wife left us, and she unfortunately passed away in 2020. So I'm in the process of helping that family wind up their affairs and working with bank, attorneys, accountants, all of those groups that are necessary at end of life, and have had a really wonderful experience doing that. I also, because it was a part-time job that I was able to do all those years, I had the opportunity to volunteer. So have volunteered in a number of organizations, volunteered with Fontenelle Forest, which was one of my favorites as far as just getting out, hiking, walking, taking our boys there and helping the forest itself to raise money to be able to provide that opportunity for kids in the community and adults who wanted to get away from urban and take a nature walk. Also have volunteered and was on the Children's Hospital Friends Board. Children are very important to me. Healthcare is important to me. And so that was a really wonderful experience and loved every minute of it. Also decided to run for the Omaha School Board back in 2013. So I ran for that, won in 2013 and re-ran in 2020. So during that time, the first year and a half, I served as board vice president, and then I had the opportunity to serve as board president. So to me, education is really important, ensuring that we're growing our workforce in the state of Nebraska. And I'll speak, I'm sure, more to that as we talk. But those were really just very important years for me, because children are important to me. Our community is important to me, and our state is important to me when I think about where I came from and the experiences I've had. So that's a little bit about my background.
Perfect. Thank you, Luann, and thank you for sharing about your family. We always love to hear those things, and of course, your background and some of the issues that are important to you. Those are critically part of this whole discussion. So thank you for disclosing that. We have provided for you ahead of time a set of 3 issues containing 4 questions pertaining to the 50 plus in Nebraska. Yep. Again, we're looking at allotting 5 minutes for each of those questions. So our first question is health, caregiving, and home and community-based services. And Susan DeCamp is going to take that. So go ahead, Susan.
Hello, Luann.
Hi.
Nice to have you here with us. And I just have to let you know, my family and I lived in St. Paul, Nebraska for 31 years, just down the road from your Loop City, and spent a lot of time at Sherman County Reservoir there by Loop City. So
yeah, very good
area. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit, like Gina said, about home and community-based services. So home and community-based services, also known as NCBS, provides an array of services to help with daily living activities for people that promote independence and allows them to age in place in their own homes and communities and delay having to go into institutional care. Family caregivers also provide care for someone who is not able to live independently. These family caregivers are usually family members or friends or acquaintances, and they often provide that care without any pay. So we have found out that telehealth services can be significant for older Americans, particularly in rural areas and underserved communities. And they can also provide support to those family caregivers by reducing travel, waiting time, and other costs associated with caregiving. So we have a couple of questions for you on that topic. The first question is, what will you do to support the 240,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska through policies such as enhanced respite services, access to telehealth, caregiver education and training, and help with their out-of-pocket costs? The second question, what will you do to protect and or expand the home and community-based services program, particularly in the area of recruitment and retention of a sufficient workforce, and also adequate funding of the services that Nebraskans and their families rely on?
Yeah, those are very complex issues, right? So my mother, actually, she passed away from pancreatic cancer, but she also had Alzheimer's prior to that. And I just remember, being from a rural community, the challenges we had in finding someone to help out when one of us couldn't be there. I drove often from Omaha to Loop City, which is 170 miles away, took my kids along with me. And so it is very important that we provide training to get more of those type of individuals prepared to help with our elderly, and also to support family members, because you do get really exhausted and worn out, and you need that little bit of time where you can just say, okay, I know that for the next 3 hours I can go to the doctor's appointment, or I can go do this. Well, I have someone who I know is ensuring that my parent is safe. And that was very important to us. So first of all, I think that internet access is critical for so many things in our state. It's critical to for our elderly as they age and they want to age in place, to be able to have those telehealth services. I have sat on a board when I was on the school board that we really emphasize the importance of telehealth, especially in communities where you may not be able to get to a doctor as easily. And and it wasn't something where you had a broken bone or you needed stitches or things like that, right? So I think that internet access is critical, and I will be very supportive of trying to ensure. I know that there's federal dollars that are now being used for that, but I want to make sure that that isn't diminished, and that importance is there for two reasons. One, the telehealth component of those who are in need of that in communities, no matter their age, right? But especially the elderly, and then also in providing potentially, supports through modules or training for family members or others who are looking to be in that role of respite services. So if they don't have access to some professional education in a way, using that kind of thought, they don't know what's out there because they don't have the internet access. So I think that internet access is so critical. I've seen it even in Omaha, where sometimes it's lacking in certain parts of our community. And so that is, to me, an absolutely necessary thing in our state for us to be able to grow our workforce and to be able to ensure that people have the resources they need. So I think that's very important. I also, when we talk about the retention of sufficient workforce and recruitment, to me, one of the things that's really critical, one of the things I'm running on, is the importance of a rigorous K-12 education. Because if you have a really rigorous K-12 education, you will produce students who will come out as adults who can move into careers caring for others. My sons, I have two sons right now that are both dating girls who've decided, hey, we want to go into nursing. It wasn't the first thing they thought of out of high school, and they're stepping into that role a little bit later. They are really excited about that. And I just think we need to work on that, especially in our high schools, whether it's helping kids to get certified as CNAs, in all of those roles. My mother-in-law, who's 92, we moved her from Hastings to Omaha because it was becoming more and more challenging for us. She could no longer stay in place, and we needed to get her into an assisted living facility. And I am so grateful for the individuals who are there. And so to me, absolutely making sure that we have the access to internet services so that people can get some of those trainings through that, in that manner versus face-to-face. And then also ensuring that our education is rigorous enough so that students learn the math, the science, the things that they need to be able to provide for and care for us. I'm over 50, and I want to make sure that I'm cared for by someone someday as well. I think the other component of that is just ensuring that when we have, and I'm not an expert on this, but I am speaking from just what I know and from a business perspective. If we are not keeping up with the rate of inflation on salaries and on reimbursement to people and facilities for what they need, we're going to fall behind, and we'll see nursing homes close like we have in some parts of our state. So I think it's really important that we keep up with that rate of inflation, and that we ensure that those individuals have a competitive pay so that they don't abandon and go decide to do something else because they didn't feel like they were making a living wage.
Thanks, Luann. We appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luann, and my condolences about your mom. I'm sorry that it's always hard to lose a parent. It's always hard to lose, but I do appreciate also your thoughts and your comments on the caregiving perspective, because not everyone completely understands that. So we do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Moving on to the second question now is on nursing facility quality, and Joyce Beck is going to take that. So go ahead, Joyce.
Hey, Luann, thank you for giving us some of your time this afternoon. Over 20,000 Nebraskans require care in nursing facilities or assisted living communities. And as you alluded to, facilities have closed their doors, and they cite reimbursement challenges and staffing shortages. Nebraskans will need an additional 4,700 more nursing assistants, LPNs, and RNs by 2028 to meet Nebraska's care needs. Everyone, regardless of where they reside, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect and to have access to quality medical care. Better staff to resident ratios improve the overall quality of care and the well-being of residents. Workforce recruitment, retention, and job satisfaction challenges are prevalent across long-term services and the support industry. Causes of workforce challenges must be identified and implemented to respond to the growing need for high-quality care. So, Luann, here's my question for you. What will you do to improve the quality of nursing facility care for Nebraska residents, including addressing the growing long-term care workforce crisis in the state, professional education and training, and accountable facility reimbursement?
Well, first of all, I would say that I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that those facilities stay open. I've had uncles and aunts in nursing homes. My mother-in-law, as I shared with you, is in an assisted living facility. Both of my parents, before they passed, needed some care, and in cases we used nursing homes while they could be there. So that's a very important thing to me. We want to make sure that that reimbursement is where it needs to be, and that we, can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Yes.
you're good.
Okay, that we ensure that we provide that reimbursement at the level where they can stay open. So it was interesting. I was at my high school class reunion this summer, and two of my friends are working in two different nursing homes nearby each other in central Nebraska. And they were just talking about the challenges of individuals who go in sometimes and don't have that family member who can be an advocate. And so they end up being that advocate for that person. It made me realize how big of a role they take on in a nursing home, of not only being the advocate, but also essentially being that surrogate, sometimes family member, who's there to ensure that that person has what they need socially and emotionally as well. So I think there are a number of things that we could do in the state, and one of them revolves around workforce development. So whether that's introduction at the high school level to some of these career paths and ensuring students get there. I have toured in another state a high school program that was end of junior year, beginning of senior year, where they actually had kids go for half a day for an entire semester and focus on a career path after they'd already gotten all of the basic requirements. I mean, they were strong in math and strong in science. And I watched some of them as they were working on the potential of a medical field or doing something in the medical field. And you're talking about kids from one extreme somebody who may want to be a doctor, but someone else who may say, you know, college isn't necessarily for me, but I definitely want to be in the healthcare field. So how do we provide for that? And I believe that we need to do more in our secondary education and our post-high school component, whether it's encouraging people to stay in the state and pay off some of their loans if they stay in a field for so long, whether that's, you know, I think there's a couple fields, teaching and healthcare, that are really necessary for our state to grow. We know that in smaller communities, the farms have gotten larger, so there's fewer people, but we still have our nursing home needs. And so you don't have quite as many people there. That goes back to that internet access. And if we can help people come to the great state of Nebraska, relocate, and bring along a spouse, adult children with them who want to work in our state, they can't do that if they don't have good internet accessibility and those types of things. So to me, it's really important that we start thinking about how we're going to grow our workforce to meet the needs. I know we talk about it, and I know that the Nebraska Department of Education talks about it. Everyone kind of talks about it, but I don't know that there's been a really great study done to say, what do we need to do? And have we really talked to students and their parents? So there are some things that I believe that we could do as a state, require that every student has the opportunity in their senior year to explore through knowledge of what career paths they could go down and what kind of outcomes they could have in that, versus just, oh, I get to college and I pick a major. Exploring a little bit more about that as far as knowing what your career path could be, what the costs would be associated with that. Some other states are doing that today. We have not done that. I think that's an important step for us. So those are things, just because of my love of K-12 education and wanting to make sure that we keep kids here who choose to be adults and become productive citizens. What can we do to keep them here? So I think, I guess that would be really important to me. We've run it. I'm reading about nursing homes that are closing, and we've had a number close in this state. And that concerns me when I think about most often you want that parent to be close to you and near you. And so in our rural communities, the importance of those nursing homes. In Omaha, sometimes those costs become expensive. And so how do we help families through that and help them manage that? So I hope that answered, that kind of answer your question.
Oh, I think Joyce must have jumped out or fell out because of her internet. So I will answer for her. Yes, that was great. And thank you, Luann.
Okay.
We'll move on now, just in the essence of time here. Our
Okay.
third question for today and our discussion centers around livable communities and helping people stay in their home. And Tim Potter's going to take that. So go ahead.
Okay.
Tim.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Yeah, Luann, thanks for doing this with us today. A livable community is safe and secure, offers affordable housing and transportation options that allow individuals to travel by multiple means, and provides supportive community features and services for people of all ages, allowing people to remain in their communities as they age. Affordable and reliable healthcare and transit options are critical to support older Nebraskans aging in place. High-speed internet should be affordable, reliable, and accessible for all Nebraskans. Digital skills development is also essential to internet access in the home. So my question is, and even some of the previous, specifically for this topic, we ensure all Nebraskans, mainly those 50 plus, have access to livable communities which offer affordable housing, diverse transportation options, adequate health care, and affordable, reliable, accessible speed internet, including digital skills development.
Yeah, very good. No, I have to tell you, I'm impressed always with my 92-year-old mother-in-law who has learned how to use her smartphone really well, but she's probably gotten lots of training from her grandchildren. And so it is really important that people understand and know how and are not afraid to use their computer and use it for supports and resources that they need. When we talk about access to healthcare, I think about, I was just having a conversation with the optometrist, and they were telling me that in other states, they're allowed to do a procedure for glaucoma, but not in the state of Nebraska. And so the first question I asked was, okay, if the person has to go to an ophthalmologist and it's 3 hours, someone 3 hours away, does that in turn cause them to not make that decision to go, and their glaucoma gets worse. And they said, absolutely. And so those are the kinds of state statutes that we need to work on, supporting and ensuring that if you're trained to do a procedure, whether you're a nurse anesthetist or an optometrist, as long as it's safe and you're trained to do it, that we ensure we provide that so that it's more accessible to more people, and that they don't put off procedures or processes that would result in a diminished life, their life being diminished because they can't see as well, or they choose not to have to drive further for that care. So I think those to me are really important. I live in Omaha. I understand the challenges here, and I also understand the challenges in rural communities. That transportation component can, even in Omaha, be expensive if there's not a good way to get to someplace. So we need to make sure that our transit is safe. But in rural communities, it's often really hard to find transportation unless you track down, as in my mother-in-law's case, her 80-something-year-old friend who took her to the grocery store, right? And so we want to make sure that individuals have access to transportation services. There have been shuttles sometimes, and then they shut down because the funding isn't there. So whatever we can do to help ensure that people have access to good health care. I am very concerned right now as I talk to some of the folks in District 10, just the cost of living and specifically their property taxes. And when I talk to retirees who say to me, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in my house because my property taxes are going up so much because the property valuation increases. I hadn't counted on that. I'm on a fixed income. That extra $500-600 a year is going to be, a burden for me. And how do I do that? And so I think we definitely need to figure out how we're going to manage that. And one of the ways is for government to be more efficient, so that we can give more back to our taxpayers, but also to make sure that we're providing the resources like internet access, great roads to our communities and to our entire state, so that they can, so that we can grow it, right? We want to grow our state. There's no reason we shouldn't be growing Nebraska. So let's see, did I catch most of?
Yep. I think you got it, Luann. I appreciate your thoughts and comments on that. We are kind of coming to the end of our 30 minutes here. So as we conclude and wrap things up here, I would like to offer back to you the final minutes to provide any closing thoughts or comments that you might have for our members and of course the constituents of your district that you represent. So with that, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me just to share some thoughts. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know I am sure many AARP members in District 10. I've had great conversations, and I think that goes back to ensuring that we've talked about nursing homes, that we've talked about property taxes, we've talked about access to health care, and we've talked about their family members who are in other parts of this state and their need for some of those things. So whether we have traveling, I know, there are many traveling doctors who go from Omaha out to communities, but what can we do to ensure that people have the ability to get there? I've also heard from my friends in the nursing world who say, hey, we just don't have enough care providers right now, and it's not safe for someone to go back to their home and they have no one else to take care of them once they leave a hospital. So we've got to work on this entire workforce development. Education is very important to me, and it trickles all the way down. And then you get to the problems you get to when you don't have a workforce that's developed to take care of the needs that we have in many areas. So those are important to me. I will work hard for the constituents of District 10, similar to how I worked when I was on the school board, and will listen and continue to talk to people and take your phone calls and emails and work to respond to those. I always like to hear from folks and always want to be able to respond and share with you my thoughts.
Luann, thank you again for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign. And again, thank you for meeting with AARP today. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thanks, Luann.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luann.
All right. Bye-bye.